All right, Mark Rogers TV, voice of college football, coming your way with a live stream, 5 o'clock Eastern time on a Sunday, talking up the West Virginia Mountaineers. We got Shyler Callahan from Dub V Nation on the line to talk up the Mountaineers. How you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing well. Nice to have you on a couple weeks ago. Had a great talk about Big 12 football and the Mountaineers in particular. So let's get started and dig in on something we just mentioned before we started to record, and that's that sometimes hearing no news out of camp is good news, and so that's a good thing. We've got a recruiting note that we can start out with as well, and maybe a few that could be on the horizon.
Yeah, West Virginia just picked up their third linebacker of the 2019 class, Jared Bartlett, out of Georgia. Very good find for West Virginia. This is an underrated kid, very overlooked. Is going to turn out to be a really good player for West Virginia in the next couple of years. And, it just goes to show how well Doug Belk has done in the state of Georgia recruiting. They're going to continue to hammer in that state. And also not really recruiting, but West Virginia did pick up the transfer Vendarius Cowan from Alabama. So another piece to that linebacking core for the future. Great news for Tony Gibson in that defense. And two kids that are looking as if they're leaning towards West Virginia is safety Ty Key Smith and corner MJ Devonshire. They're going to be both deciding within the next few weeks. So just be careful to watch out for those guys.
I don't want you to pin you down on this one, Shyler, but any particular angle on the Alabama kid, anything that you know about him yet?
He's very big. He's definitely a lot bigger and a lot different than the other linebackers. I mean, he just jumps out to you at practice. You know exactly who he is. You don't even need to put a name or number on him. You know who he is. He just stands out. He's very big, very physical. When you watch his tape of his high school time and the little bit that he got in Alabama, he just swallows people. He does not let you get out of tackles. He suffocates you. He's a sure tackler, going to be a big kid. Really probably could even add another 10, 15 pounds and still play with that weight. I mean, he is just that good. And we got an Alabama insider on our podcast last week and gave us a good insight on him. He's a good kid, just needs to find his head a little bit. So if he can work out the anger issues, it should be a good find for the Mountaineers.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We bring on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the nation as we cover everyone. And if we're not covering your team as well as you'd like, then they either need to win more. No, I'm just kidding. We try to cover everyone as possible, but obviously we've got to prioritize, or you need to bring an excellent guest on here. And so lead me in that direction, like we have here in recent weeks with West Virginia and Shyler Callahan from Dub V Nation. So you can join him right there. And Shyler, before we continue the conversation, let people know where they can find you and your various outlets.
You can find my personal Twitter account at DVN Callahan, and you can follow the website at Dub V Nation. That's DUBV Nation. And you can follow our podcast at Between the Ears. And if you're really into recruiting, follow our recruiting account at DVN Recruiting. Cody does a great job doing that stuff over there, and he's on top of it. So be sure to follow us on all of our outlets.
I know that everyone's satisfied with the playmaking ability on the outside to support Will Grier as a Heisman candidate and possibly get West Virginia to the Big 12 championship game. How much is the concern about Justin Crawford's absence, though? Is he not somewhat irreplaceable, at least with the guys that you've got on the roster?
Actually, I think it's going to be an upgrade this year.
Okay.
And I think it is. It's,
all right.
It's more going to be of a committee of backs instead of that premier feature back like we have with Justin the last 2 years. And there's 4 capable backs on this roster, and they all are going to play. Kennedy McCoy is going to be the go-to guy. Martell Pettaway, he's kind of that little bowling ball. Alex Sinkfield, he's that twitchy, shifty kid that can be the home run threat. And the one guy that's been turning a lot of heads is true freshman Letty Brown. Big physical kid. Will Grier even said himself, as soon as he gets in the weight room, his kid's going to be a monster. So he's going to probably play a little bit as a freshman. So 1 through 4, this may be the deepest backfield that Dana's ever had at West Virginia, and a lot of people just don't know about it yet. So I think by week 3 or 4, you're going to get a good grasp of how good this running back room is.
And when you talk about Kennedy McCoy, he's a guy that really blasted the Kansas Jayhawks. And when anybody may smirk there, they did have talent, especially at the linebacking core. The front seven was pretty good at Kansas, ripped them up for 232. And if that doesn't make you a believer, 137 against Oklahoma. So he had a nice season in relief of Justin Crawford with almost 600 yards and 7 touchdowns. The offensive line has to get the job done, of course, Schuyler. So your thoughts about, you've got Yandi Kajusti coming back at left tackle, an all Big 12 performer. He kind of is the headliner.
Yeah, absolutely. These two tackles that West Virginia has, again, it may be the theme of this preview or the theme of this peek in at camp, but there's a lot of premier talent. And it's probably the two best tackles that they've had, again, under Holgorsen. Colton McKivitz on the right side, Yandi Kajusti on the left. And there's been a lot of people, including the running backs, Will Greer, and the offensive line coach Joe Wickline, that say that this team or this offensive line as a group has taken a huge jump in production from where it was last year. They did a pretty good job of protecting Greer in the pass game, but they struggled to open gaps for the running backs. That's not the problem this year at all. There's the running backs and the production is just a huge jump, and there's just huge gaps, and it's just a night and day difference. And then you start to think, well, is the defense that bad? But it's from what I've been hearing, the defensive line is impressing too. So it looks like the trenches are in a good shape right now for the Mountaineers.
Talking West Virginia football with Schuyler Callahan. You can join him on Dub V Nation, his second appearance here at Mark Rogers TV. And we had a good time talking up the Big 12 following media days. And West Virginia's after a 5-4 campaign in the conference last year, but missing Will Greer down the stretch, taking a shot at the crown this year, which might be wide open with Oklahoma, maybe down a couple pegs, but still the overwhelming favorite on paper, at least. The defense takes a bad rap, and it was pretty awful at times, most of the time last year. If you look at the advanced metrics on this defense, Schuyler, and you know a whole lot more about it than I do, 96th in the country last year, but there was a lot that played into that. So the three previous seasons, even though the narrative is people just assume, okay, Big 12 defense, you're winning every game 55-50, and your defense is awful, and maybe you've got one player at each level, and that's all you've got. The defensive metric against that league's offense, the 3 previous seasons, talking about 130 deep in FBS, was 46th, 30th, and 37th. So the defensive performance hasn't been that atrocious.
It hasn't been, and again, a lot of it attributes to playing in the Big 12 Conference, where you got guys like Baker Mayfield and Mason Rudolph lighting you up week to week. Thank God those guys have moved on, but, it's the Big 12. They're going to just reload. So, the defense a year ago was very young, very inexperienced, and as Dana said last week in his press conference, they had to play 2 freshman defensive linemen. And, typically you don't want to play freshmen in the trenches just because that's the most physical, most demanding position to play as a true freshman. So they were forced their hand. They had to do that. This year they're in a much better situation with both sides of the offense and the defense of lines. And you got, Kenny Bigelow, the USC transfer on the defensive line, Jabril Robinson, the Clemson transfer, and then they bring back a ton of guys who've been in the system for 2 or 3 years. So this is a much better, much more experienced defense. It's not going to be a top 25 defense, but they should make it a significant jump. And hopefully, if they're in that top 50 to 60 defensive range, now you're talking West Virginia could be in the hunt for the playoff. And I know that's a far wish and a cry, but this defense has never been in the top 50 under Dana Holgorsen. They've been close a couple times. If they can get to a top 50 defense, or at least close, with that offense, it's going to be hard to beat this team. I mean, Oklahoma has done similar the last couple of years with an average top 50 defense.
Yeah, I think they were more in the 65 range last year and still made the playoff with 1 loss. So it can be done, especially in that conference, considering the way the games are played and the style of play. This freshman, Dante Stills, he's a 4-star. Is he going to be counted upon along the defensive front at all, do you think, this year?
Yeah, he should play week 1. Obviously not going to start or anything. He's not that quite ready, but he's got a high motor, very, very talented. And, this is one kid. He's a legacy kid. His dad played back in the day, Gary Stills. His brother Darius is on the team. So you may see them both on the field at the same time. And that's something that may, bodes well for West Virginia to know that they have that chemistry together. So I think by about week 6, 7, you're going to start to see him play a little bit more and more. But the good thing with Dante is he's a different type of kid. And it's the same thing with, Vandarius Cowan's, the same thing with Dante Stills. They're different bodies. And Tony Gibson alluded to this in the offseason that he wanted to get bigger, he wanted to get stronger, and he did that by adding guys like Stills, Robinson, Bigelow, and now Cowan. So different bodies that are coming into this defense, and hopefully it'll pay off in huge dividends.
We're the voice of college football here at Mark Rogers TV. Please follow me on Twitter. We've got a Facebook page as well. You can like me there. Even if you don't truly like me, like the Facebook page. And, of course, we've got the YouTube channel here. Like, comment, and subscribe. It helps drive the engine, and you guys have done an amazing job. We've picked up about, I don't know what it's been, something like 3,000 subscribers in the last year. So we're up past 5,000, and we expect the next year to be much more than that, with like 3,000 or 4,000 comments in the last month, and that's way up tenfold over this time last year. So thank you. Use the Amazon links that you see in the description sections. That will help drive the channel as well. You don't need to buy the products. What you do is you just go onto Amazon as you typically would, just use the links and buy whatever you want. And also we have a mailing list started that's about 15 deep already in just a few days, and that's going to include a mailing out to you each and every Monday on my take on the weekend's play, a channel update, and some trends and stats and facts that you won't find anywhere else. We bring on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the nation on a regular basis. That includes Shyler Callahan of Dub V Nation to talk about a team that seems extremely intriguing this year for a lot of people, on the cutting edge of possibly making a college football playoff appearance, the first out of the Big 12, not named Oklahoma. And so it would appear as though Will Grier would be maybe the most valuable player, even if he doesn't win the Heisman this year, maybe the most valuable to any team in college football, Shyler.
He very well could be. I mean, he's, I know he gets a lot of slack from the other fan bases, and, they all say, he's, took PEDs, or he's been in college for 10 years. I mean, the guy's only played a year and a half of college football, and I don't know where that 10-year thing comes from, but he does everything the right way. He had a bad mistake down in Florida. He just, we know that situation. I don't want to get too far into that, but he's definitely matured. He's a father. He's got a wife. He's got a whole family outside of football. So he's very mature. And West Virginia launched this Heisman campaign for him. Don't know if I'd approve it for anybody else, but for a guy like him and his stature and his maturity, you got to believe that he's going to be able to handle that. So he's definitely going to be, West Virginia's MVP. But there's definitely going to be some other big names that are going to come up this year that we haven't necessarily seen in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I admit it. I'm jumping all over the place, offense, defense, and back and forth, whatever is catching my eye at the time and coming to mind. And one would be the secondary, and that's another narrative that is a bit overplayed, but it's very young. It's very thin. You've got this kid, Hakeem Bailey. Would he be considered to be the best player you've got back there?
As a cornerback, yeah, I think he's going to be our quote-unquote elite lockdown guy. He showed flashes of that towards the end of the game or end of the season last year, especially the Iowa State game. Really locked down guys like Allen Lazard. So, I mean, this is going to be, a cornerback unit that's going to be really thin. They're going to depend on a lot of young guys, a couple of JUCO transfers. But the safeties is a spot that I think that is going to help them because they have so much talent at safety with guys like Drayvon Henry, Toya Savory, and Josh Norwood, Quantel Rains, Kenny Robinson. They're going to be able to move those guys around. They won't always be at safety. So a guy like Josh Norwood, the former Ohio State Buckeye, he's a safety by trade, but he's going to definitely come down and play corner a little bit. Tony Gibson said he's going to put his best 11 out there. So he doesn't care if he puts him at defensive end, safety, linebacker. He's going to make sure he's get the best 11 on the field.
Shyler, Tennessee out of the gate. That's a neutral site game, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, it'll be right down here in Charlotte, about 40 minutes from me. So.
Okay, nice. Oh, so you're down there in the Carolinas.
Yeah.
Okay, very nice. Very nice. I understand it's beautiful down there. Good place to live.
I would say for the last week and a half or two, it hasn't been. It's been raining every day, but for the most part, it's pretty good weather here.
Well, I think it's been raining up and down the East Coast everywhere. regardless of where you are. We've had a beautiful summer, and then over the last 10 days, we've just been inundated with rain ourselves here in Connecticut. But I bring up the Tennessee game because on paper it would seem like a mismatch, but if you look at the roster talent, Tennessee may actually have more in terms of recruited talent. This might be a good time to play Tennessee. I don't think they're going to be a world beater or anything by any stretch, but I think they're going to have a year of transition under Jeremy Pruitt. But I just analyzed the roster a few days ago from some of my previews, and they've got really good talent on that team, but you catch them week one. It might be the best time to catch them before Jeremy Pruitt works things out. Is there any level of scare in that game?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime you play an SEC team, you got to have a little bit of nerves, especially with the hype that has surrounded this team, the last month or two. I mean, every time West Virginia has hype, for some reason, it seems like we fall short of that hype. And then the years that we aren't expected to do anything, we rip off 10, 11 wins. So you just can never know. Jeremy Pruitt's going to come in and get this thing turned around. Like you said, it may not be week one, but this team's going to be much improved. They do have the talent. They've had that talent sitting there for years now. They've never had a problem recruiting. It's just been able to develop the talent and getting it on the field and producing wins. So, I mean, they've got some playmakers. I think obviously their quarterback situation is still up in the air. And if you're going to get in a shootout with West Virginia, I'm going to give the advantage to West Virginia in that game. But if it's a low-scoring defensive game, Tennessee's got a shot. So, with Tennessee, they got to think, this is West Virginia. I know West Virginia is not highly thought of amongst the Blue Bloods, but I mean, they got to think we're not supposed to be on the same field as West Virginia. We're on another level. So we'll see if that kind of comes onto the field. I feel like there's going to be a little chippiness just because the fan base is back and forth, the players back and forth. So we'll see where it goes, but it could definitely be a close game.
Yeah, this is the kind of game that I love to see at a conference, even if the teams aren't very good. Well, West Virginia is supposed to be, Tennessee not so much. I've got Tennessee projected in the 5 or 6 win range. But in regards to just a regional flavor that we rarely see, I would love to see West Virginia, Virginia Tech like we did last year, West Virginia, Tennessee, West Virginia, North Carolina, West Virginia, Maryland, obviously is an old rivalry from when they were independents back in the day. And a lot of people would love to see that renewed as well. Got Shyler Callahan on the line talking West Virginia football, and not many people on the live chat right now, but we know we will have hundreds of views when this is posted. And I would like people to be directed to Dub V Nation and Shyler's work there, because he does a great job, and you can tell he's a walking encyclopedia of West Virginia football. So you need to check him out there. Shyler, I'm going to abuse you as a producer for me here.
Okay.
Starting tomorrow, I am releasing all my previews and predictions for everybody in the Power 5.
Okay.
So I've got about as good a handle on the overall landscape and a little bit about every team as anybody you're going to find, I would argue. But, of course, you're the expert on West Virginia football, not me. So I'm going to take you through my notes here, and you tell me what makes sense and what I'm missing here. And it's not going to be a book, but I'm trying to hit on the main points here and be pretty comprehensive about it. So you got Dana Holgorsen. I'm interested in his tenure at West Virginia. It's been fairly marginal since that early success. I'm looking at 43-34, 27-27 in the Big 12 after. So I just have to think, based on the expectations this year, that he may be on a bit of a hot seat if they turn in another 7-5 kind of season.
Yeah, he's been really on the hot seat ever since the Orange Bowl against Clemson, and ever since that team kind of started out 5-0 and had the 4-game skid in 2012. The fans have a love-hate relationship with Dana. They love him one minute, they hate him the next. I'm sure a lot of fan bases are like that, but they want to see 10, 11-win seasons. That's what West Virginia fans are used to. They're used to those Rich Rodriguez days, the Don Nehlen days, where they were in the top 10, top 15 regularly. West Virginia has not done that under Dana Holgorsen. They've done it a couple of times, but they really want to see him win against the ranked teams, and that's something that he struggled with.
And then the obvious stuff on offense with all the big playmakers we've already talked about, with Justin Crawford gone, Kennedy McCoy taking over in the backfield, Martell Petaway. 4 of the top 5 wide receivers are back. We all know about Gary Jennings We know about David Sills catching 18 touchdowns last year. Marcus Sims. Is it worth mentioning the Miami transfer Giovanni Haskins at tight end, or the Alabama player TJ Simmons?
Yeah, TJ Simmons, he's a kid that's just really fun to watch in practice. I mean, this guy's got a ton of speed, but he's not a speedy receiver. He's not that shifty guy. He's a possession guy. Receivers coach Tyron Carey said he's my motor out there. He's got motor in his legs and a motor in his mouth. He doesn't shut up. So this is something I think West Virginia hasn't had since Tavon Austin or Kevin White, that swagger and that little bit of confidence, that cockiness to it. So I think when TJ Simmons hits the field, you're going to see a lot of explosive plays. He may be the second or third leading receiver on the team this year. Giovanni Haskins, he's not going to start right now. At least he's not slated to. But I think as the season goes on, he's going to win that job over.
So you gave us a great review of the offensive line led by your all Big 12 left tackle. So you kind of ran that down for me. But in regards to this being one of the better offensive lines that you would project to see in recent memory at West Virginia, or is this still an issue, or where do you stand on the offensive line?
Yeah, it should be one of the better ones, hopefully. Now, that's if the production in practice turns to the production on the field during the games in the season. So we know that they protected Will. Again, like I said, they protected him pretty well last year. They kept him upright. The gaps were not there running. So if the running backs can get those holes like they're saying they are in practice, this could be one of the better lines that we've seen. And, Dana said that, the competition at center is actually really heated right now. Matt Jones started all 13 games last year, but Jacob Buccigrosi, who missed all of last year, is actually ahead of him. So he's got two guys that can snap it too. So we've got some pretty good veteran presence up there on the front line.
Defensively, so you've got David Long, who had 75 tackles, 15 and a half tackles for loss, and Dylan Tonkery at the linebacking position. Otherwise, I'm seeing where basically your 7 top tacklers besides those two guys are gone. The guys I've listed are Reese Donahue and Ezekiel Rose at defensive end being your main guys. You mentioned Bigelow and Robinson coming into the program to fortify the defensive front. Dante Stills as well at defensive front, 4-star freshman. The secondary, I mentioned Hakeem Bailey because he was the guy that jumped out at me, and all this safety talent as well. Anybody I'm missing on the defensive side?
Two guys, again, that's not really catching a lot of names right now, and that will be a huge impact for the defense is linebacker Charlie Benton, and, again, cornerback/safety Josh Norwood. Those two are probably going to be the biggest playmakers outside of David Long, Drayvon Henry, and Kenny Robinson. And, I mean, these two guys, Charlie Benton, a JUCO transfer, played, I think, out in Butler, Kansas. He's very big, he's a little lanky, but he's tall. 6'3", 6'4". He came down. He used to play safety at junior college, so this is going to be a transition for him. Josh Norwood obviously had the experience at Ohio State before going to Northwest Mississippi. So those two guys, I'd say, are going to be the next two studs in this system. But Zeke Rose is going to have a huge year for West Virginia.
This stretch drive, Schuyler, is something else here. So you do have the advantage, and I think a few things are coming into play, and it gives reason why a lot of people are high on West Virginia. The scoring offense, the potential there is just explosive off the charts with the most capable and the most productive and the most reliable quarterback in the conference and maybe the nation coming back. So that's all a given, a known. Just keep these guys healthy, keep them on the field. In addition to a few other things play into it. You mentioned all the quarterback talent that's left the conference, and sure, overall, there's not going to be a drop off year after year. There's going to be the new wave of stars, but you might catch a 1-year lull in quarterback play that you can take advantage of. And also the schedule with the 5 at home, 4 on the road, slight advantage there. Stretch drive, though, boy, we're not going to know a whole lot about the championship aspirations of this team until right at the end. Texas, TCU, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma to end the season. That is a gauntlet for the Final Four.
You are not kidding. And I tell you, the Big 12 has done us dirty on that one. I think that's maybe one of the toughest stretches in all of college football for November. And, you got to play championship caliber football in November. Teams are going to get better by then. Oklahoma may have their issues right now, but by the time we catch Oklahoma, they're not going to have any issues. So there's a lot to be between now and the time we play those 4 teams at the end. but you got to take it one game at a time until then. You can't get to Oklahoma, you can't get to TCU until you play Tennessee and NC State and stuff like that. But I do like what Joel Klatt said last night on Fox Sports is he thinks West Virginia can get to 8-0 if they have talent wise they're in a better position than Tennessee, and they're in a better position than NC State. And I think he means that with guys that have been there and in the system for a while. So if they can get to 8-0, now you're talking Will Grier Heisman top 5 team in the country, and now if they can just finish that 4-game stretch without falling apart.
And I mentioned when we were talking about meaningful non-conference games and that have a regional feel and really sound like attractive matchups, I just threw out North Carolina. I was just throwing out regional teams. Of course, NC State is the matchup this year, and that's another one that I love with the experience that they have coming back, at least at quarterback. Of course, they lost one of the top 3 or 4 defensive lines in the country across the board. They're all gone, but NC State's always capable and should win anywhere from 7 to 9 games again this year. So that's another test. And that game's on the road, correct?
Yes. So West Virginia's got a tough schedule this year. 11 Power 5 opponents. Not a lot of teams can say that.
Absolutely. West Virginia, it's going to be fun, regardless of what happens in this one, because they're going to be slinging it all over the field with playmakers almost unmatched in college football, a guy at the trigger that can do it as well as anyone as well. And then with that stretch drive and with those 2 non-conference games that aren't necessarily the sexy LSU, Miami, Michigan, Notre Dame kind of matchups that everybody's talking about. But man, I got to see West Virginia take on Tennessee. I know that's very under the radar considering the Vols and what they failed to do last year. But and then this NC State game on the road, I think is going to be a whole lot of fun and a must see for big college football fans, regardless of who you root for.
It definitely is. Again, like you said, it's not the sexy matchup, but they're tricky games. And, going to play Tennessee, that's going to be a packed house. Tennessee is going to bring a bunch of people. West Virginia is going to bring a bunch of people. Going on the road anywhere is going to be tough, especially to a place like NC State when you're going to be potentially coming in as a top 15 team. So they've got their challenges ahead of them. It's just a matter of hurdling one at a time.
So, Schuyler, anytime you say anything that may offend Ohio State at any point, we've got a guy, NCIS Fanatic 21, who does a great job of supporting us here, but he's always going to catch you on this. So 11 Power 5 opponents for the Buckeyes as well. So Schuyler certainly wasn't saying we're the only team out there. He said we're one of the few, and that definitely plays out because, for one thing, you've only got 2 conferences in the way. You got 3 conferences in the nation that play the 9 conference games. So that eliminates the SEC and the ACC right there. And then very few pick up the 2 out of 3 in the Power 5. So anyway, West Virginia, very difficult schedule. I don't think there's any debating that. I've got them ranked extremely high in my schedule rankings. Right, Schuyler, I think we've cleaned it up pretty well here. I appreciate you jumping on board. And again, I direct anybody to West Virginia Football Talk. I'm sure there's a ton about the Big 12 as well there with Schuyler at Dub V Nation. All right, Schuyler, you are welcome anytime, and hopefully we can talk up some Tennessee here before the game and after the game.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on, Mark. Appreciate you.
All right, everybody else, again, we direct you to the Amazon links to help out the channel. You can buy any of the products. Also, get on our mailing list. Just send your email address to MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. Otherwise, I will be back here with more live streams tomorrow, and I start all my previews and predictions. Every team in the Power 5. I'm finished with my schedule rankings as soon as I release the final 3. It's 3, 2, 1. So who are the 3 teams that I didn't hit? They have the 3 toughest schedules in the nation. And then, bam, tomorrow we start with our previews of everybody. This is going to be a blitz. I got 16 days to go, and I'm going to get all 68 teams in the Power 5 done with previews and predictions right here at Mark Rogers TV. So we will see all of you next time.